Dr. Ranger here, pediatric chiropractor at Thrive, and I want to explain a little bit of what you might not know about low tone in kids and why what's commonly recommended like OT and PT can be really helpful, but is missing what is going on at a deeper level. So let's talk about this. And what we need to understand first is that this is a really common challenge, and it goes beyond just the muscle tone in and of itself. Actually, 50% of kids struggling with stuff like autism, sensory challenges, ADHD, also have low muscle tone, because this is a part of a much bigger thing that's going on. So this is not just something to ignore, something to write off or hope your kid grows out of it. We really need to get to the bottom of it and address the kids' what I would call neurofunctional challenges with that. Because what is so often the case is when we have low tone, maybe you notice your kid doing the W sit, or they're not able to keep up with kids at the playground, they're getting fatigued more easily, they're not having good core stability and tone. What is often talked about is we need to support them with different physical therapy activities. We need to have different OT programs to help build up that actual muscular activation. And we love those things. We love awesome pediatric PT and OT therapists, and that can be really helpful. But it is way more effective and way more helpful when we are doing that while actually addressing the nervous system. Because what we see in the older kiddos who are dealing with low tone is that often started as a high tone issue first. So let me explain. The low tone comes after the high tone, after the fixation, the restriction, the misalignment piece of it. Because the kids, maybe that are 2, 3, or 5 or 6, or even teenagers dealing with low tone, we often see are ones who had motor milestone struggles as a baby. Maybe they were a kid who right away at birth, they were holding their head up, which isn't a good thing, right? That's a red flag in our book. They're not just advanced, they're stiff, they're tense, they're rigid. We don't want to see that in kids. Maybe they're a kid who struggled with tummy time, or they weren't able to relax and be at ease. They were always in this state of tension or rigidity. They had a big preference, something like torticollis, which can lead to plagiocephaly, a flattening in the head. They always found themselves looking in the same direction. All of those high tone issues are an indicator that there's some sort of neurological disturbance, which typically is coming from this upper neck area. You might be wondering, what in the world would a baby, would a kid with those sort of age ranges be dealing with as far as a neurological disturbance? The missing piece that we often see in that is really the birth process. Maybe it's in utero constraint, the way they were jammed up in mom's womb. Maybe it was the birth process itself. If there's forceps, vacuum extraction, C-section, that is an immense amount of force pulling, turning, twisting at that head and neck. But even if your kid didn't have one of those named interventions, almost every birth is having some sort of helpful guidance, pulling, turning, twisting at that head and neck from the OBs, from the birth providers themselves. So we see that those later problems with low tone is really what I would call just a dystonia. It's a dysfunction, because what later is too little, early on is often too much. And even in that older kiddo, they might have low tone in some areas, but high tone in tension and stiffness in other parts. So it's really a dysregulated nervous system, way more than it's just something that we need to do some more planks and sit-ups and push-ups and core stability work. Yes, those things are good. We all probably need them in our lives, right? But we've got to actually address that neurological piece of it. Otherwise, you're going to maybe make a little progress, but then plateau because you're not actually getting to the root issue. The scan that comes to mind is this neuromuscular activity analysis, one of the 3 scans that we use at Thrive to assess the nervous system and how our body is functioning. This one in particular is measuring muscle tone. You're in a seated upright position, and what we're doing is figuring out how much work, how much activation does your postural system do when you're just at a place of rest, in a place of ease. So that scan is the one that we really get to see, one, how much tone and rigidity does your kid have? Maybe it actually is way too much and they're really wound up, which is going to cause all the sensory and ADHD and focus and anxiety issues too. Or maybe they're just disconnected, right? Maybe there's a really dysregulated nervous system that we need to get addressed and figured out. Parents, I hope this helps. I hope this gives you some information beyond just let's stretch what's tight, let's strengthen what's weak. It really comes back to the neurology. We got to address that piece of it before you can expect to really get your kids out of both the low tone issue, but even more so those other struggles that go hand in hand with it. Please, if this sparks other questions, check out the link that's in our bio that's here in the post. Reach out to our team for questions. We're always happy to chat more and see what we can do to make sure that your family, your kid is at your best, and you are all thriving.